Last month I posted a video that sought to combine the storylines of the Allied and Soviet campaigns from Red Alert into one cohesive chronology. In short, the missions from both sides fit together into a single timeline up until a point of divergence around 2/3 of the way through. But there was one element of the story we glossed over, and that was the pair of expansions that were released for Red Alert after it launched, Counterstrike and the Aftermath. These sought to expand the arsenals of the Allies and Soviets and added a grand total of 38 new missions between them. Though they provided little additional narrative, they do elaborate on certain events that took place during the main game. The missions are mostly unconnected, with the fact that they could be played in any order listed as a key selling point on the box, but there were a few exceptions, such as the Allied mini-campaigns in Counter-Strike and the Soviet levels relating to the phase tank. One final piece of the puzzle is the Red Alert Retaliation PlayStation game, which combines the two expansions and slightly alters some of the briefings. In Retaliation, we take on a new persona for each faction, who I'll refer to as the Covert Operations Commander, under the command of the newly arrived American General Carville.
Oh, by the way, I'm General Carville.
Or the loyal and affable General Topolov.
Меня зовут Topolov. General Topolov.
The easiest way to incorporate any of these expansions into your playthrough would be to consider each as running concurrently with that faction's main campaign, in isolation from the opposing side's missions, both the original campaigns and that expansion. However, with a little bit of work, we can plot a path through the expansions that integrates all the new levels with our combined original storyline. The recent remaster included the Retaliation format as the default way to approach these levels. I'm going to try to remain faithful to this new order, the original Counter-Strike mini-campaigns, and an order which fits the existing narrative. As a final note, in the Retaliation PlayStation game, each new country unlocked would offer the player 4 missions to choose from. Completing any 3 would unlock the next location, making it possible to delay completion of one level to a later date. I'll be making use of this in the chronology, and I'll refer to it as the Retaliation rule in the 3 instances where it applies. The Allied missions in Counter-Strike were originally divided into 3 mini-campaigns titled Sarin Gas, Fall of Greece, and Siberian Conflict. Retaliation would split Fall of Greece and recontextualize its 2 missions to integrate them into the other pair of mini-campaigns.
General Stavros has a Siberian informant who knows where the Soviet atomic processing facilities are hidden. Stavros insists on going to meet him, personally.
I've seen it erroneously said that the Sarin Gas campaign takes place right at the very beginning of the story, as referenced by Gridenko in the 3rd Soviet level.
Did you not report all our nerve gas sites secure?
I inspected them myself.
And how did the Allied dogs eliminate our Sovrinsk facility?
Impossible! My security was
inefficient, as we feared. That plant was our primary site. Will there be enough nerve gas left to proceed with our plan?
However, Gridenko only mentions this as their main production plant, the implication being that others exist. This abandoned plotline never returns in either campaign, suggesting that this Sarin Gas mission set was the final nail in that coffin. Retaliation tells us that these levels are set in Greece, as is the second mini-campaign, Fall of Greece.
Welcome to Greece.
In the original order, Personal War, which is now lumped in with the Siberian Conflict, was the first level in this set. Using the Retaliation rule, we can stick to the original order without breaking either narrative. Personal War shows the Soviets making liberal use of atomic weapons, though all are dropped by air. This means that at least the Fall of Greece levels must be placed after the 9th Allied level, Evacuate Kosygin, where we first hear of the nuclear tests.
One of our spies has confirmed our worst fears. The Russians have developed a weapon greater than anything previously known. An atomic bomb.
There is one new piece of tech present in Crackdown, the first level of the Sarin Gas mini-campaign. The Soviets have ready access to the prototype Tesla tank and are able to build them freely. This is in contrast to one of the first Soviet missions in Ukraine, Legacy of Tesla. Here the Soviet commander has only a handful of prototypes, suggesting an earlier setting. The Allies are also fielding some new technology in Legacy of Tesla, in the form of a captured MiG, potentially one of those left behind by the Soviet commander and overseer, which carries a nuclear payload. The Allied nuclear program can be traced back further, however, as we see their first trials in nuclear escalation. So we now know that all these missions take place after Evacuate Kosygin. The last 2 Soviet levels in Ukraine are Mousetrap and Paradox Equation. We'll skip the former for now using our Retaliation rule, and instead focus on Paradox Equation. Though the Soviets never managed to capture one in their own campaign, there's nothing to say that they don't achieve their goal of salvaging the Chronosphere when the Allies are the ones who ultimately come out on top. The chronosphere makes its first appearance in the 8th Allied level, so conceivably Paradox Equation could be the earliest expansion mission in our timeline. This also gives an explanation as to why the Soviets frequently destroy them in later levels, or have intimate knowledge of their function in other maps. The final Allied mini-campaign of Counterstrike is the Siberian conflict. The first 2 missions of this are centered around preventing the Soviets from re-establishing their nuclear arsenal.
The commies are at it again, developing atomic capabilities.
This implies the events of the 2-parter 10th Allied level, Suspicion and Evidence, have already taken place. But the briefing for naval supremacy takes place immediately afterwards, so this mini-campaign must follow after that.
That was too close.
Wasteland is the last of the Siberian levels, and mentions clearing a path towards Moscow, a fitting goal for this point in the story. In a sense, it also confirms that the Allied campaign is the canonical ending, as at no point during the Soviet one is Moscow even remotely in reach of the Allies. The second country that the Soviet Covert Operations Commander visits is Austria. Despite their best efforts in the Siberian conflict, one truck carrying nuclear components does get through, and in Top of the World the player must safely get the truck to its destination. Upon doing so, the Soviets have regained their nuclear capabilities, at least in a limited capacity. This is just in time for the 12th Allied mission, Takedown, where the player is likely to be fired upon by a nuclear missile. The objective of Takedown is to bring the Soviet Iron Curtain offline. Since the Iron Curtain is present in the Counter-Strike mission Proving Grounds, this must go directly before that level. Proving Grounds also answers the question of where the Allied fleet seen in Naval Supremacy got to. They were destroyed by the prototype atomic torpedo sub. As an aside, the Allies are again using MiGs in this level. Besieged doesn't have much to place it in the timeline other than yet another Soviet traitor, which fits with other events happening around this point. Lastly, we'll skip over Soviet soldier Volkov and Chitskoy, using our Retaliation rule for the last time. It doesn't seem likely that the Allies could begin their nuclear program until the Soviet atomic threat is dealt with, along with the key defection of Kosygin and the capture of vital scientists and information during Allies 10. With that in mind, we can be reasonably confident in placing the Counter-Strike missions towards the end of the original campaigns. I'll go over a complete summary at the end of this video. While Counter-Strike might have fitted into our timeline without complaint, the Aftermath is going to fight us every step of the way. Before we look at the individual content of the missions, I'm going to provide an overview of the expansion and the problems that are facing us. The first question we have to ask ourselves is, when is the Aftermath set? Certainly with a name like the Aftermath, it suggests that these missions take place after the end of the original campaigns. However, Stalin himself is behind the orders he received in a handful of these missions, and is directly mentioned in others. Given Stalin's grim demise at the end of the Allied campaign, and even the Soviet one as well, it must be that these levels take place before the final mission, but does that mean they're all set before the assault on Moscow? The answer comes unexpectedly in the form of the Red Alert Retaliation game manual. This booklet sets the scene for the conflict, and is quite clear that after the events of Red Alert, the two factions retooled their armies and continued the conflict. The Aftermath then features missions from the final stages of the war, both the build up to the campaign finale and the immediate fallout that followed. To keep in what I feel is the spirit of the expansion, I've tried to place as many of these missions as I can after Stalin's death, though several could be placed earlier if it's your preference. The missions of this second expansion form a tightly interconnected web of plot points, and unravelling the mystery of the chronology is going to come from looking closely at the lives and deaths of 4 prominent characters. As well as the aforementioned Stalin, we have his allied counterpart Stavros, and also the 2 commandos, Tanya and Volkov. Over the course of the Aftermath, each one of them is going to feature in several levels, but also end up losing their lives. The key to our order lies in ensuring that none of these characters return after their death. Easier said than done, believe me. Furthermore, the Aftermath features 4 pieces of advanced technology: the Chronotank, the Phase Tank, the Missile Sub, and the Mad Tank. Each of these are the focus of certain levels or even mini-campaigns, so we can use them to further justify our timeline.
Take a good long look, Major, because you'll be attacking that harbor at dawn.
The third destination for the Allied Covert Operations Commander is Italy. Most of these missions center around the destruction of the Soviets' new missile sub-program. Beginning with production disruption, the Allies launch a lightning raid to stop development, then follow it up with Caught in the Act, the only Aftermath level not to feature any new technology. Harbour Reclamation is the last of the Italian levels that has a loose connection to the missile sub-program. In it, General Stavros himself orders the capture of this vital port. Unfortunately, this will be the one time that we have to use our Retaliation rule in the aftermath. This is because Harbour Reclamation grants the player full access to the Allied tech tree for the first time, and more problematically, the entire Soviet arsenal should you start capturing their bases. Crucially, the MAD tanks have not yet had their first outing, so we have to delay its placement until later. In the Nick of Time is the final level in Italy, but doesn't provide any further context to help us place it. Because none of these levels feature either nuclear weapons or the Iron Curtain, I'm placing them after the 13th level, Focus Blast, which is itself a direct continuation of the 12th level and thus leaves no space between the two. 3 of these levels feature a new piece of technology, the Chronotank. This vehicle is first alluded to in Don't Drink the Water and then introduced in Testing Grounds. Both levels are set in France and so clearly happening well behind the lines, but that fits with the nature of these Soviet missions. Another research project is happening in France at the same time, and the player is dispatched by Stalin himself to capture the phase tank in Let's Make a Steel. The subsequent test drive features chronotanks and missile subs, meaning both must be in production at this point. More interesting than any of that new tech though is the introduction of the Soviet commando Volkov and his dog companion Chitskoy. At this first meeting, Volkov is on par with Tanya in terms of performance, but his abilities will soon grow. The last destination for the Soviets in Retaliation is Spain, and these missions all feature a common theme.
Our people, Colonel, are becoming more of a problem than our enemies.
The Soviets are starting to turn on each other, civilian uprisings are underway, and factions are breaking off from what's left of the Empire. Brothers in Arms recounts the final moments of the Molotov brothers, a pair of arms dealers who up until this point in the war have been selling weapons to Russia's allies. Now though, they've been contacted by General Stavros and are planning a betrayal. The mission briefing doubts that this could be the case, indicating that the situation has not yet deteriorated to the point where defections have become commonplace. But it soon does start to fall apart for the Soviets, as next up we have a pair of civilian uprisings. Stalin dispatches some of his elite guard to put down a rebellion in shock therapy, and in Grunyev Revolution the situation is even more dire. Towards the end of the level, the player can disobey direct orders and allow the civilians to escape. Doing so results in Stalin signing yet another death warrant for one of his commanders. Should this be the path the player takes, it doesn't make any sense to do any further missions after this betrayal. Thankfully for the Soviet commander, the situation soon resolves itself in his favour when the Allies launch their final assault on Moscow and Stalin is killed. Grunyev Revolution was the last of the Aftermath missions to mention him by name, so we have no reason to delay the inevitable any longer. With Stalin dead, the Soviets are initially thrown into disarray, but later will consolidate their forces and continue the fight. The Allies themselves are busy fighting in Poland while the main body of their force closes on the Russian capital. In preparation for their assault on Moscow, Pawns sees the Allies organise a diversion to draw Soviet forces away from the capital. Once Stalin is dead, the Allies about-face and race to the aid of their besieged forces. Following this, we have the last of Volkov's appearances in his vanilla form. In Situation Critical, he is dispatched to stop a radical splinter faction from launching a deadly biological weapon, one that could be as dangerous to the Soviets as it is to the Allies. Negotiations marks one of the final appearances of Tanya in Red Alert. In the briefing, the Soviets are referred to as terrorists, a significant downgrade of the once continent-conquering supernation they were. However, the Soviets are not out of the fight yet. The final piece of the Soviet tech tree is introduced in Absolute Madness in the form of the Mad Tank. This rare vehicle only appears in 2 other instances. With the Soviets now fielding their full arsenal, we can finally finish the Italian levels by playing Harbour Reclamation. It's because of Stavros' involvement in this level and in Stalin's death that we have left until now one of the earliest Counterstrike missions. In Mousetrap, what few Soviet radicals remain head out to avenge Stalin's death, finally cornering Stavros in an underground facility. This facility is home to numerous chronospheres, and Stavros makes ready use of them. In the past, chronospheres have been unable to teleport infantry, so this new ability coupled with their abundance suggests that this is very late in the timeline. To wrap things up, the Allied commander must race to prevent a final desperate retaliatory nuclear strike against London in Time Flies. This is one of the final actions of the war, with both sides possessing a full tech tree. This is also the last opportunity for the player to control Tanya. Dr. Dmitri is another defector who has information on a new Soviet research project. An experimental type of armour has been developed that threatens to once again turn the tide against the Allies, but Dmitri does not wish to see it used. Things go wrong for him, however, in Monster Tank Madness, when he loses control of his super tanks and must be rescued at short notice. The Allies take his research notes and begin their own testing program, but the Soviets make a punitive assault of their own. At this point we can include one of the Counterstrike missions we skipped over, the original introduction to the Super Commando in Soviet soldier Volkov and Chitskoy. Volkov is considerably stronger in this level than his prior 3 appearances, so it makes sense to put this level later on after the Soviets have really started to experiment with him. These 2 levels complement each other nicely and wrap up some loose ends, but Monster Tank Madness isn't as strong an ending for the Allies as time flies. Swapping them doesn't create any conflict, so that's how I'm choosing to order them. However, the synergy between Super Tanks and the Super Alloy was close enough that I've discussed them both together here. Soviet Soldier Volkov also marks a significant moment in the franchise that a lot of people miss. At various points in the Soviet expansions, we've had to face Tanya or Tanya-like commandos. It's easy to dismiss these out of hand as simply being the Tanya model being reused for the sake of the game, but in this last Counter-Strike mission, something is different. Upon completing the level, the end cutscene shows something that in the base game is reserved purely for mission failed scenarios. It shows Tanya's grave. This marks the end then of this famous Allied commando having finally met her match in Volkov. Volkov's last appearance is in Deus Ex Machina, which depending on your actions can result in his destruction. Volkov has fallen into enemy hands and could potentially be used against the Soviets if they aren't careful. To account for this potential conflict, I've made sure this is the last time he shows up. And that's our definitive list and a complete summary of Red Alert's Second World War. Every mission is now accounted for. General Carvel tells the Allied commander to go home.
Go home! Have a beer, you're a hero!
And Topolov retires, with the younger commander taking his place in the reformed Russian Republic.
This I will leave for you in your new office.
But there is one final thing we skipped over. The bonus campaign, It Came from Red Alert, is widely regarded as a non-canon entry into the franchise, and I don't want to pass judgment on that here, but if you do choose to include it, the placement of those 4 levels should be after the collapse of the Soviet Empire, but before the death of Stavros in Mousetrap. Stavros himself descends into the abandoned Soviet research base to personally kill the Ant Queen, and without him there, England is sure to be overrun by the bug menace. It was a couple of years ago that I first created a combined Allied-Soviet chronology for our post on Reddit. Back then I can remember hitting a wall when it came to the expansions and I had to break it into 3 parts just to get through it. When I decided to turn it into a video, I thought the hard work had already been done. That was until the remaster came out and brought the Retaliation order into vogue. Suddenly the old list became obsolete and I had to start from scratch. I didn't realise just what a nightmare I was creating for myself by trying to stay within the Retaliation structure and also not introduce any character or tech anachronisms. But now, more than 3 months after I started work on this video, I've reached a point where I'm extremely happy with my end list, and I feel that I've finally and definitively answered the question as to when the Red Alert expansions take place. I really hope you've enjoyed the video guys, and if you have, be sure to check out some of the other Command & Conquer videos I have on the channel, and leave me a comment letting me know what you think. Thanks very much for watching, and I hope you'll join me again soon for another video.